Hello and welcome to Moneylife. This is Sucheta Dalal. Today I'm going to talk about something a little different. It's about draconian new rules and how they're going to affect the not-for-profit sector. So what do we do in India? Whenever we discover a problem, and especially if we catch big, powerful, well-known companies breaking the rules, then our attitude is never to catch them, punish them, or act on them. So we do two things. We either set up committees to discuss the issue, we come up with all kinds of checklists that apply to the whole sector without identifying the wrongdoing and punishing it. This, in fact, affects everybody. So it makes no difference between people who are breaking the rules and those who are not. So it adds to the friction of doing business. It creates stress, especially among smaller people with less money. It increases the cost of doing business, and there's a general sense of disillusionment and harassment. This happens in corporate India all the time. You've had 3 committees looking at just good governance. The sad thing is that it's now being extended to the not-for-profit sector. Sledgehammer regulations never work. In fact, if they did, you wouldn't have bad loans of 10 lakh crore. Banks would not be looted with impunity. There are endless regulations. The biggest loot is from public sector banks, which are subject to vigilance, central vigilance by the government. The Controller and Auditor General looks at it, and yet a bunch of large corporates have helped themselves to money, and we keep blaming political interference, but nothing ever happens. Instead, access to small companies becomes very difficult, or even when they genuinely face a business problem, they are just being stripped of their assets and collateral. Now look at what is happening in the not-for-profit sector. What has triggered this column, this video blog, and what is a cause of worry is an article that we have read in Business Standard. But before that, let me tell you, every not-for-profit organization is subject to so many rules, multiple registrations, is being demonized as a bunch of rule breakers, which is ironical because most not-for-profits are working at low salaries and among the poorest and most needy people of society. In fact, they're doing the job of government. That's why they're called non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, which is how I'm going to refer to them. And yet, the government likes to pretend that these are a bunch of lawbreakers. Yes, there may be. I'm not saying that everybody is pristine. There may be some small companies which are so busy doing the work that they're doing among the needy that increasingly onerous rules, red tape, and regulations that the government wants, including registrations with multiple ministries, including having to keep reporting your accounts repeatedly to a whole bunch of people, how you use money, from which account do you use it, and everything comes with a draconian punishment. On the other hand, government agencies have never been under pressure to work fast, to clear things, even to register trustees, register their resignations. It's been a one-sided thing. But today, it is the NGOs who are being demonized. How fair now is it for the government to decide that just because a few very powerful, very wealthy NGOs who have enjoyed a special dispensation, and here I'm talking about the Tata Trusts. So like I said, everything that is got to do with the new rules is because of the Tata Trusts. Now before I come to the Tata Trusts, let me explain the trigger for what this video blog is about. On 6th January, Business Standard wrote an article which said that in the forthcoming budget, there are going to be new provisions in the Income Tax Act which will enable the tax authorities, mind you, look at how draconian this is, to seize the assets, personal assets of trustees in not-for-profit trusts if they are in breach of the objectives of the government registered trust. Now, our instant reaction is, well, if people break the rules, they should pay for it. But it's not as simple as that. This entire article, with an unnamed source, obviously from the government, is obviously attacking one entity. And when I say one entity, actually it means 6 trusts that belong to our most respected corporate group, the Tatas. Did they break the rules? Well, yes, let me put that up front. If you go by a report of the Comptroller and Auditor General and what has been happening with the tax department, they definitely broke the rules. Are they still India's most respected corporate house? Yes, of course they are. Let's keep both in separate buckets and hear what I'm saying with an unbiased and dispassionate attitude. So, what is the source in this Business Standard article saying? And I need to read this out to you. The article quotes a source saying that public trusts have become the easiest route to launder money due to lack of governance and proper monitoring. Who's responsible for governance and monitoring? It's the Government of India. Launder money, not-for-profits, all of them. But this is a kind of sweeping indictment in this article. It also says the operation of trusts is mostly opaque and there's no system to track them, which is such an irony because you have multiple registrations. The source goes on to say, since these trusts also receive funds from genuine people, the management of these trusts should be questioned and held liable for not fulfilling their objectives. That's the only correct line over here. I agree with it. But the difference is, catch the guilty, catch the people who are breaking the rules. Punish them. Don't come up with draconian regulations for everybody. So this sweeping indictment of NGOs is, let me put it very clearly, patently false, grossly exaggerated, and smacks of such a completely biased mindset. Like I said, over the past 5 years, setting up NGOs has become so difficult. Now you're going to say that trustees will have their personal assets seized. Who are the trustees of not-for-profit trusts? These are people, many times retired people, who devote their time completely free of cost. We usually look for people with high experience, a good reputation, great knowledge either in government or in their chosen fields, who are willing to donate their time free of cost. Mind you, the important part being free of cost for public good and social service. If you're going to threaten them with having their assets, personal assets, confiscated because you simply want to tar everybody, and the point is that it is once you have a draconian enabling provision, you are unleashing harassment, or what we call tax torture, because it's not going to be restricted to the wrongdoers. It is going to be used as a tool of harassment. Now let's come to why I link this to the Tata Trusts. Because this article in Business Standard seems to be a catalogue of all the allegations, because the article doesn't stop with those two paras. There have been several allegations against 6 powerful and extremely wealthy Tata Trusts which have enjoyed, and this part is important, which have enjoyed unique and exemplary privileges that are not available to anybody else. Let me make a simple point. These trusts hold the shares of Tata Group companies. In fact, they control the Tata Group through their holding in Tata Sons, which is the holding company of the group. None of the other trusts are allowed to invest in anything, no mutual funds, no other investment except bank term deposits. In fact, when interest rates are high and interest rates on term deposits are high, they earn a little more from corpus funds. When interest rates go down, they struggle to make things ends meet because the interest rates are so low. Nobody has the privilege of bonuses, dividends, and imagine the enormous power of controlling a large group, the most respected blue chip group like the Tatas. Why did this happen? Why were they given this unique privilege? Because rules about what trusts can do came in later. So there was a cutoff point of 1st June 1973, and it was said that public charitable trusts, especially people like the Tatas, who, like I repeatedly say, do good work, were given an exemption and said that they could continue to hold shares and their shareholdings and bonuses would continue. But after 73, they were not supposed to get any more shares. Now, because it's a big group, and our most respected name, obviously people didn't pay attention. This went on until 2013. In 2013, things suddenly changed because there was a report of the Comptroller and Auditor General, which, again, this is so unique because they don't name names. Okay, we know through court cases that have happened, there's a case in the Supreme Court, that this applies to the Tatas. We also know all of this for another reason, which is that the Tata Group, while all their companies are well run, don't always do the right thing. So a couple of years ago, Ratan Tata led the Tata Trusts and dismissed overnight, in one of the most shocking actions in corporate India, just sacked the chairman, Cyrus Mistry, of the group. It made waves, it grabbed headlines, and the manner in which it was done, without even a modicum of decency, is obviously being fought in court. So there was a first order before the National Company Law Tribunal which went in favor of the Tatas, and in December there's been a second order by the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal which has sweepingly ruled in favor of Cyrus Mistry and in fact asked for him to be reinstated. Typically the Tatas have gone to the Supreme Court and it's being heard. Now since the sacking was done through the powerful trusts which hold shares and control the group, all that has happened is now under a sort of magnifying glass and is being looked at. There is another separate action that's happening, which is that in October 2019, the 6 powerful Tata Trusts which control the group, and I'm going to read the names later, these groups had their income tax exemption cancelled. Now, an income tax exemption under Section 12A is important to all not-for-profit organizations because it's seen as a signal by the public that these people are doing the right thing, they're doing charitable work, and that the tax authorities have examined it and have granted a concession. This concession was cancelled. This is an enormous blow, and again, it is only to the Tata Group. Let me explain that in a little more detail. So coming to the Tata Trust, there are 3 allegations made against the Tata Trust. One is that they continued to get shares allotted to them well after this 1973 exemption. In fact, in 1999-2000, in that year, they got shares, very valuable shares of TCS, which went public, and these shares were then converted into preference shares. Were they allowed to do it? It's not clear. A second allegation is about the tax exemption, because a lot of the work that they do, they're highly profitable and may not all be charity. So that is being examined by the CAG, and CAG thinks that there have been major irregularities. Third, all trusts and their trustees, especially managing trustees, don't usually draw any salary, or they draw a basic salary. The managing trustee of the Tata Trusts was an extremely powerful individual. He was even promoter in some of the aviation companies, and he earned a salary of over 4 crores. After this controversy, he's left and he's joined the Reliance Group. His name, he was known as Venkat. His name is Mr. Venkataramanan. All this has made news. There's nothing new over here. Now, let's come to what the CAG has found out. And let's be very clear that all these things are being discussed by us because they are going to have implications across the board to millions of not-for-profit trusts. So the CAG report, what did it say in 2013? It said that the Jamshedji Tata Trust and Nawabhai Ratan Tata Trust were given irregular tax exemptions by the tax department. The tax effect of it was not small, 1,066 crore. The exemptions to the Dorabji Tata Trust had an implication of over 30 crores. These are just 2 of the large charitable trusts of the Tata Group. Now, like I said, they are accused of misusing this exemption to buy and hold shares. I've already talked about how these TCS shares were held by them. And I think one needs to read out some of the things that are there in the CAG report. The CAG report of 2013 was followed up by another report in 2019. This report points out that it's not merely its findings, but the Public Accounts Committee in its 104th report, this is in the year 2018, had also expressed their concern at how public charitable trusts were being used to run commercially for profit business and had repeatedly violated provisions of the Income Tax Act. Doesn't name names, but it is again about the Tatas. They say these are violations of a serious nature, and the failure of the Income Tax Department to monitor whether the trusts were fulfilling their objectives under which they have been established and are ensuring that no abuse of concessions takes place. There is a lot more here about what is found, but basically let's come to the tax exemptions. In 2019, like I said, the CAG expanded on its findings and discovered that several trusts had been violating this tax exemption. Okay? One of the things that's going to come up in court is going to be very interesting. It clearly shows that the tax department was extra benevolent to the Tata Group. So the Tatas had three allegations, like I said. One was that they hold shares, the second was the high salaries and misuse of tax exemptions, and there was another interesting thing that they did. The trust donated money to a third trust, which in turn gave money to Harvard and Cornell universities. As everybody knows, these are two of the most famous universities in the world. They are extremely wealthy universities. They don't need money from a poor country like India. Is that by itself illegal? No, it is not. But the Tata Trusts were not empowered to release this money. They did it through a third trust which was set up. So the 6 trusts which were wealthy gave money to a trust, which in turn gave the money to Harvard and Cornell. Now, they need permission from the income tax department if they do it, and the income tax department is allowed to grant this permission only if this is for the welfare and benefit of India. How does this benefit India? It doesn't. So the tax department had first objected to it. Then it gave a post facto clearance for 100 million investment. CAG says that doing this post facto clearance was obviously not correct and irregular and has indicted them. What is the tax department's reaction? It cancelled the exemption in October 2019. The Tatas are contesting it. So all this dirt has come out because of these actions and court cases. And what is the government's reaction? Like I said before, they don't want to punish the guilty. You find wrongdoing, you catch it and you punish them. Instead, we are told that this budget will introduce a provision which is so draconian that it puts into question the entire not-for-profit business that, as it happens, and the public service that people do. What is most ironical about all of this is that on one hand, the government is making it mandatory for every public limited company which is profitable to invest 2% of their money in what they call CSR as part of corporate social responsibility. This CSR work is all the time done through NGOs. If you're going to make it difficult for NGOs to survive and make it so full of friction and compliance and red tape, what is the purpose? I think we need to change our mindset. All our blue chip companies are not always doing everything that is right. They do wrong stuff. The Tatas, their sacking of Cyrus Mistry lacked decency. Ratan Tata's strange equation with the notorious Sivasankaran is one of the issues that are questionable. We all know about the Neera Radia episode. Neera Radia was a corporate lobbyist, and the kind of deals that were being struck with media as well as political parties down south on telecom has never been questioned. The Tatas have a blue chip reputation. Let me repeatedly say, yes, they do good work. So they get away with things that would have led to a massive reputational damage to anybody else. But now, if you have the Tata Trust doing something wrong, for heaven's sake, punish them. You can't punish the rest of India. Let's get very clear about punishing wrongdoing rather than treating wrongdoing with new rules and red tape. This is not what the Prime Minister promised us. He said less government, more governance. Let's have governance, let's have punishment, let's catch the guilty, let's not punish everybody else. Let's let loose these animal spirits, or at least social spirits, so that the NGO sector continues to do good work. Thank you.